Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Map Round Show. This is the Built in Texas series, and if you've been following any of the other series, you kind of know what I'm doing here. But for those of you who've been living under a rock in Texas, hopefully, I'm connecting you to amazing founders just doing incredible things and making the world a better place. So with me on the line and is none other than Petey Peterson and Miles Murray, co-founders of Locoal. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show.
I'll be there.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great, man. It's great. So you guys are doing some incredible stuff. So I've been looking forward to this one. So here we go. So for our viewers around the world, guys who potentially haven't heard about Locoal and what you guys are doing, I'd love for you to maybe start, Miles, with you around your background, and then we'll do the same with you, Petey. Like, what's your background? How did you guys meet? And maybe if you could start just painting a picture of like how you guys got together and decided to create this business, Locoal. Off you go.
Well, yeah, Matt, thanks so much for having us, and hello everyone, and we love the show, so thanks for having us on. You know, this really started for me when I was in the service. I graduated from a school called West Point, and I went on to serve in the Army in Iraq, and we were moving everything in containers. We were having to move fuel and logistics. And I just really noticed that we produce a lot of waste and it takes a lot of logistics. So I've always just thought to myself, there's got to be a better solution. A few years later, I ran into Petey at a grad school program, and this hero of a man was taking waste and converting it into charcoal by hand, like a true American hero that he is. And so I just thought to myself, you know, it'd be really great to build a machine that kind of operationalizes what he's doing and take it to those places that I've seen around the world that could really benefit. And that's where I met Petey, and I'll let Petey kind of tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, thanks, Miles, and thank you, Matt, for letting us be here. I'm really passionate about the biochar aspect of it. So when we capture this charcoal, it's a very useful application for restoration. And so we really want to look at how do we restore our planet, because we've done some pretty bad things to it over the last century. And so biochar is really helpful for soil regeneration, livestock, and just really overall water, air, and food security. And so the biochar is my passion. We've figured out a way to make it very quickly and smoothly and remotely, which is what the market's really looking for right now. So we'd love to show you a little bit more about our technology.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all of that. So what's the problem, gentlemen? Maybe Petey, let's start with you because you're up on screen for everyone. Like, what is the problem that you're actually solving? Like, you touched on biochar, you touched on like the product and so on. But like, what's the issue here that you're trying to reconcile for everyone?
There are lots and lots of materials that we consider waste that goes into our landfills. It's unused. And so here at Locoal, we've understood how we can unlock the value in those resources to put clean energy back into the grid and that biochar back into the soil.
All right, fantastic. So is this about clean energy? Like, how much of is this narrative here for you guys about creating a way to create clean energy? Like, what are your views on clean energy and how important is it for this particular conversation?
So,
well, the electric. Oh, sorry, Miles.
Well, no, you go right ahead. I mean, yeah. Petey was in the solar energy business for a while, and we've been in it for a long time, renewables. So Petey, go ahead.
Yeah, the electrification needs of the next decade is not going to be able to be met with our solar and wind. And until we figure out a cleaner nuclear solution, we really need to look at new solutions. And so biomass conversion that's very clean, near zero carbon emissions, actually negative carbon emissions when we can capture the carbon as a byproduct. But we really just need to figure out how do we electrify this grid as we're bringing more electric vehicles online.
Mm-hmm. So what's wrong with the kind of convention around energy at the moment? In the sense, what I'm trying to get to is like when we look at the traditional way that people typically look at materials, it's from my perspective, it's oftentimes broken, right? This way of looking at energy production and the materials used to create it. I think in many cases we actually destroy a lot of energy rather than create it. And I think what's interesting from my conversation with you guys when I first met you is that you guys have kind of figured out a way to make it more circular, quote unquote, like the first mile and the last mile of materials. So Miles, I'd love for you just to walk our audience through this problem a bit more.
Sure. The problem that we face is there's a constant demand for sustainable power, reliable power. And that's a luxury that we experience in the United States a lot. It's pretty stable power. However, that is not the case globally. And it's also become, the demand for energy is continuing to rise, while our infrastructure and our traditional methods at which we derive energy, such as fossil fuels, though is a sufficient source of power, is oftentimes difficult to install large-scale infrastructure projects, as well as the social sentiment. So, what we saw was we destroy ecosystems to derive raw materials, and those raw materials are utilized somewhat inefficiently until the end of the life cycle. One of those being wood, another one being tires. And so at the end of the life cycle, when you see this large accumulation of waste, you have to ask yourself, well, how much of the actual original raw material is here and what was consumed along the way? And what we found is everywhere you go, and we'll take the wood, we'll take the forestry industry. I mean, to make a board, the microphone that I have, that you have, the clothes that we wear, was transported likely on a pallet. That pallet came from a larger board that came from a tree. So you have these small piles of waste that get dropped. And eventually we put the pallet into the landfill. And we said to ourselves, when there's a shortage of energy and there is a rising demand, both socially and economically, for more sustainable power solutions, we looked at this waste as being an untapped resource. So we've dedicated a lot of time and effort to understanding the potential of being a zero waste society. What does that actually mean? What does it mean to be zero waste? Well, it's understanding the full life cycle of how we use natural resources.
So, Miles, just sticking with you, I mean, one of the key data points you shared with me was just in wood waste, which is kind of a thing because, for me, I was like, what? How much? Like, just share that number just to put this problem in perspective, just when it comes to the wastage around wood.
Yeah, just commercial wood waste that's collected at the municipal level, primarily pallet waste, is 13 million tons annually just in the United States, and 500 million tons globally. And that's annually. And that's about 20% of every pallet that you create ends up in a landfill within 3 or 4 uses. And the amount of waste that's accumulated along the way is more than 30 million tons in just aggregate waste. So you're looking at a significant amount of waste that is put into landfills that could be used and should be used as a viable source of energy.
So, Miles, and by the way, like one of the key things you mentioned to me also was that in the U.S. military, a lot of materials are also moved on these pallets.
Right.
So it's kind of like this is a systemic issue, and the thing that struck me when I first met you guys and you were sharing me some of these data points is that, I'm like I hate looking at chopped down trees.
Yeah.
Do you know
Absolutely.
what I mean? It's like you're cutting down the tree thing that's making our air clean, giving us O2, and then you wasting 13 million tons and then 500 million tons every single year. That's ridiculous.
It's one of the things that we marvel at ourselves. I mean, even when we were getting into this, we we're just like, man, the magnitude of a problem that is not just generally understood is amazing in itself. It's because the waste doesn't accumulate in your front door. That's what you stick into trash cans and goes to landfills, and those are taken off to areas that generally we don't interact with. But it's remarkable the amount of time, energy, and effort that goes into throwing this stuff away. So it's more than just the final pile. You think about how many truckloads did it take to take all this forestry waste all the way into the port of Portland so that we can ship it off, into a larger waste pile. I mean, it is an incredible study of the way that normal logistics in America and globally have worked. Really highlighted a lot in the pandemic too, how fractured it can be and how inconsistent it can be.
Exactly. Petey, just to bring you back into the conversation, you guys have created an incredible product. which I'd love for us to talk or walk our audience through. And so it's super innovative. It creates something called biochar and really does help solve this wood waste problem as an example. So Petey, walk us through how does your product actually solve this problem? What have you guys created?
Thanks. The technology, it's old. It's a gasifier. The idea is when you heat materials to a certain point without oxygen, it doesn't combust. So no oxygen, no fire. We put it through a process called pyrolysis, where we separate the gas from the physical. And during that part, we're actually cleaning that gas to make renewable natural gas. And then that captured carbon has dozens of applications. It's very beneficial for this porosity and the fact that it's adsorptive and absorptive. So it absorbs minerals and moisture. So when we put it in the soil, it acts like a sponge, and it binds all those good things and releases it back into the soil for the plant when it needs it. So we reduce the amount of moisture and fertilizers that are going into our soil, but also increasing the plant growth.
Right. So you guys, I wanted to share with everybody an actual image of this thing. I'd love for you guys to share that now. So Miles, would you mind just bringing that up? And I'd love for Petey just to spend a few more minutes, or maybe Miles, if you want to talk about it. Like, how does this thing actually all come together? So it looks like a kind of like a container, doesn't it?
Right. So yeah, just to kind of describe it, it is a biomass, or what we call a wood, so biomass plant where wood is turned into energy, are generally very large. We built a small one that uses a lot of robotics and automation so that we can relocate the technology to where the problem exists, at the point where the trees are cut down, at the point of the sawmill. So the way this works is we pick it up, we locate it near right next to a waste pile, and immediately they take that waste, and instead of putting it into trucks and taking it to landfills or just burning it in a burn pile, we convert it into clean energy by sequestering the gases that normally burn in wood, and we scrub them into a natural gas that can run a generator. And then the rest of what doesn't get turned into gas is the biochar, and that is the carbon remains from the wood, and that's got value to it as well. We use that for the poultry industry. We use it for soil remediation. So as you can imagine, if you're out there in the forest, or if you're at a sawmill kind of outside of the town, and you're using energy and you're also producing a lot of waste, this is an opportunity for you to be an energy provider, and also where you get to monetize these wood chips in a way that hasn't been achieved before, and that's into this product called biochar. And Petey's our product developer, and Mark, and understands the market and use of biochar probably better than anybody in the country. So Petey, why don't you kind of take it on where we do with all this?
Yes, so Miles and I really focused on water, air, and food security. That's just globally uniting for us. And really, we looked at soil and livestock, and I've been working with industry leaders and studies on both sides of those. The projects have come back very, very successful. We don't want to say names because we're actually going to have our results published tomorrow in London by a leading poultry industry. So we're able to use the biochar in the industry for poultry. We use it as a litter control medium. So by reducing the moisture in the coop, we actually reduce ammonia, E. coli, and other diseases. So that actually benefits the employees as well as the chickens. And for soil remediation applications, we've been working with Arbor Leader, and mixing biochar into the soil at about a 1-to-10 ratio, as I mentioned, increases the moisture and nutrient control, but it also enables the aeration and those beneficial bacteria to really do the work that the roots need to going on down there. So the biochar is very beneficial for that soil and for the root structure.
So, so maybe if I could rephrase what you guys have basically shared, is that the product's firstly called the Rainmaker, right? So essentially what I'm seeing is that it's a mobile, modular, intelligent hardware solution that fundamentally converts waste into energy through something called pyrolysis. And I think it's actually funny story, but my dad actually came to me like 8-9 years ago with the pyrolysis idea for tires. And that's when I first started to learn about like what is pyrolysis, how does it work. It's like if you think about all the landfills being filled with tires, it's essentially a process of like breaking it down and creating other materials that can be then reused. And in the pyrolysis for rubber, one of those use cases or the applications of the byproduct of this, kind of like biochar, was diesel. So like actually creating fuel for farmers and things like that. And that was our whole thing. We were never really successful at it. It was like you had to bring the whole plant in from China. Where were you guys? Where were you guys 8-9 years ago? But for our audience around the world, like what the hell is pyrolysis? What is it, Petey? Like what is the definition of it?
Pyrolysis the definition is thermochemical degradation in a limited oxygen environment. So it sounds complicated, but again, when you heat materials without oxygen present, they don't burn. They don't go through traditional combustion. They go through this degradation process. I kind of like to relate it to when water boils, but this is what happens when physical materials goes through that process. And that boiling point is called the eutectic point for physical materials, and that's when the synthesis gas is separated from the physical carbon.
Fantastic. So you obviously know your stuff. So if I have a pyrolysis startup in another 8 years' time, I'll come to you. Okay, PD? So look, I think one of the things I was really fascinated about was this idea of biochar. I know you touched on it, and you mentioned poultry litter, for instance. It can be used in things, as you mentioned, soil regeneration, water filtration. If that is the case, like, what is the market size in terms of the opportunity that you're going for in billions? Do you guys have a rough number for that? Like, how big is this opportunity?
Sure. So I'll take that on. The number, the market for carbon capture and the market for biochar are complementary markets, but they're technically not the same. From a biochar market standpoint, we estimate about a $30 billion market over the next 8 to 9 years, because it is a soil conditioner that can reduce your cost for fertilizer, which is becoming more and more expensive, both through regulation and through just the cost of the process, but also because it reduces your watering requirement. And here in Texas, it's a super passionate project for us, because we do live in a restricted water area. And the more west we go, the more water restrictions there are. And
exactly.
So if you have a number on what reducing water by 50% potentially would be, it would be, it's a significant number in itself. Carbon credits there's an emerging market that is, will tip 50 billion this year, and then on its way up to larger numbers as the years go forward.
Exactly. And that's what's really interesting about the opportunity, right? Through this whole pyrolysis process, through this product that you created called the Rainmaker. And one of the interesting things I'd love for you guys to talk about is the demonstration, Miles, of the technology back in May of this year, where you guys were telling me that you produced something like 4 times the amount of power that you expected. Like, walk us through that.
So May the 4th, 2021 or 2022 was the demonstration day for Locoal, and I can tell you it was wild. We had over 50 people there, and we're a startup, a fast moving startup. So we had produced biochar and produced energy, but that was the day that we were going to crank it up, and we did it in front of a live audience. And what we found was we hit our minimum threshold with only about 20% of the wood waste that we thought, meaning that we were producing over 50 kilowatt of power just with just a small handful. And that's because I'm proud of my team. We've worked for years. We did such a good job of being able to sequester that gas and separate it from the carbon, and then purify it to where we could run a generator. And by the time we cranked it all the way up to full tilt, we had 4 times the power that even the panels on the side of the wall could carry. And we had to shut it down a half an hour into it, because we melted the ceiling. You know what? I'll pull that picture back up just to show everybody. Give me 1 second. I've got a picture of biochar real quick, but yeah, we did this.
Our showcase was very successful. No, we ran wood chips through our machine and powered 3 electric vehicles all at the same time.
Right. So what you see here, going back to this picture, is this is the excess gas that we did not need to power those 3 vehicles. And it started to, we were pushing so much thermal value through, we were starting to distort the roof a little bit. And we ended up having to replace the electric panels, the motors here. We blew it out of the building, if I could, put it that way. But yeah, I think what was really interesting, and can I show another picture?
Yeah.
Real quick?
Yeah, man, go for it.
This is kind of the description of what our technology is and a picture of it. Again, it's the natural gas and energy and the biochar. But what was, a picture to show would be this right here. This is me standing here with some folks that were looking, and they couldn't believe the amount of power that was being generated. This is one of the engineers that was reviewing us. And we had 3 electric vehicles, all charging at full charging capability off of just this size bucket of waste. And so it was a really exciting moment. And then what I was showing around the biochar, and this is what Petey was talking, is that this is that product that comes out, that carbon, and how we can continue to use that. And so what I love about it, Matt, is we demonstrated to everyone that throwing something away is not the right answer. And I'm going to take this off. What's the right answer is to innovate solutions that bridge relevant emerging needs with existing problems. Everybody knows what that pile of wood waste looks like off the side of their town that gets burned up, a couple of times a year. But nobody knows right now what it's going to look like to be able to travel across the country with your electric vehicle. They know that they can commute to their house and back to a neighborhood. So what we were trying to show, and what was so exciting, what we did demonstrate was there's piles of wood everywhere. And then we can charge electric vehicles with it, and we can do it with 2 20-foot containers.
Petey, just to bring it back, I'm going to come back to you, Miles. But Petey, this biochar story, can you talk about the Tyson Foods study where you guys reduced bumblefoot by 20%? Like, walk us through what was the context around that? What is bumblefoot? Why does that matter?
Yes, a great question. So back to when I first met Miles in graduate school, he said, "Great, there's all this wood. What are we going to do with it? Petey, go find the solution." And so I called up Tyson, and we were able to run a 220-day study with them, which was 5 rotations of their Cobb 500 chicken. What the biochar was capable of doing is reducing the moisture, which reduced ammonia and E. coli, but also a disease called bumblefoot. And for those probably that have never heard of it, because I just learned about it recently, it's an infection of the foot just because it sits in water too much moisture. What we found out in our education is that the Asian markets consume those feet for their delicacies, and they go for the same price that the whole chicken does here in the United States. So when we're looking at a 20% reduction in this bumblefoot, it's a really big change to the bottom line of Tyson. And if Tyson changes their way to be more sustainable, they're an industry leader. And so we'll get all those follow-on companies as well.
Amazing. Miles, I want to come back to you around that demonstration. What does that actually demonstrate then? I mean, is it demonstrating the efficacy of what you guys have built? Like, what should the world take out of that?
Well, the first thing I would say around what we were demonstrating is that zero waste initiatives are not pie in the sky ideas. They take hard work. They take an understanding of the way the economics work, but a lot of times when Petey and I were first presenting, this is, back in 2018, we started presenting this concept. We had a whole lot of people say, oh, well, renewables is not really renewable. It's not really green. Solar is not sustainable. Wind only has a short lifespan. Everything has to be subsidized by the government. So there was a lot of negative pressure. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to show everybody that, yes, you can be both sustainable, you can make positive environmental impact, but also you make positive economic impact. The average truckload of wood waste that we send to a landfill is about 20 tons. And that'll cost you around $1,000 in aggregate cost, somewhere between 500 and 1,000. It just depends on where you are. Okay. That same truckload I could put into my machine and yield about $4,000 in value. That's the basics of it. That's just tell everybody, no. Sustainability is an economically viable solution, and you can achieve it. So as long as you're still solving real problems, and that's what we're doing, and it's awesome.
The other thing I really love, just on your website, is you're actually selling this biochar, Miles. What is the intention behind this initiative?
Yeah, so the biochar, and I'll let Petey jump in a little bit more on its use cases, but whether it's for your own potted plants to be able to grow bigger and more beautiful plants, all the way to infusing this biochar into your land so that you can have a more viable commercial crop. We're really just trying to get people to see that anybody can participate, and by participating in using biochar, by using carbon capture in a positive way, you incentivize more of it. And that's how we get through this. It's not forcing governments, forcing everyone. It's us changing the way of things. Petey has probably more to add to that if you'd like him to add in. So.
Yeah, we look at a lot of the sustainability initiatives and pushes, and it's a software or it's this or that. So we build a hardware technology that's not really affordable by everybody. So we wanted to open it that opportunity for everybody to participate in sustainability. And that's what this biochar really is there for. So you can get your hands dirty, you can plant a plant, put it in your compost, feed it to some chickens. We just want everybody to realize that they can participate in sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Petey, just sticking with you, I'd love for you to, or one of the interesting founder stories that you shared with me is that you guys actually slept on couches for like 6 months to actually build this technology.
Yes, so I met Miles, and we looked around for who we thought was the best team. And Miles, being a veteran, called his team, the folks that he served with out in the middle of austere regions. And so our first hire was Josh Racy, actually Miles's NCO, his right-hand man in the military. Flew him down here to Texas, and they started building Rainmaker at an open field outside of West Austin. And we built it at 106 degrees Fahrenheit and 6 degrees Fahrenheit. That was the temperature swing during that year of building. So our team tolerated everything and built. They came together, show what they're capable of, the true grit that holds our team together, and it was just something really special to participate in.
Mm-hmm. So, guys, this is an open question to both of you, but I mean, obviously what you've done is really hard, and maybe this is something, Petey, you should tackle, because it is a hard thing that you guys, pyrolysis is just hard in general, but to build what you've done, and having some exposure to the how hard it actually is, I really want to like hammer this one with you, Petey. So what would you say has been the hard part about doing this, and what have you learned about building something that's really hard, like what you guys have done with the Rainmaker, that you feel other entrepreneurs, visionaries, founders also building hard things should know and could benefit from?
When I started making charcoal, both biochar and lump charcoal, it was in a batch operation. So fill up a big barrel, get it going, and then it would cook itself until it went out. The big struggle has been, how do we scale that production? And that's where this fluidized gasification technology emerged out of a university here in Texas called Texas A&M. They have a beta lab, bioenergy testing applications lab. And so we looked at what they developed, and we said, no, this needs to be more robust. It needs to be much more capable of throughput and energy generation. And so I guess that conversion from a simple technology to something that's never been created before, we had to go find a team that had the skill set, but had also never done it before. And that was really challenging because we didn't know where to go find these people. But then it turned out that the network that we'd already been developing had these readily available engineers, both in robotics and in fluidized gasification, actually.
Mm-hmm. Miles, you guys actually bootstrapped this initial build with a grant from the Air Force. You guys, I believe, are in another raise now. How are you both finding raising money in the current climate? Have you found a noticeable difference? Have you found it difficult access to investors? Walk us through what you're experiencing on the ground.
Yeah. So I'm going to expand a little bit on what Petey said. It leads right into it. When we found the team, I had to look at everybody and say, funding a company like this with a complex piece of machinery, is no easy task. And so my message to entrepreneurs is, you can build great teams if you're very eyes wide open with them and what they're stepping into, but also letting them know that you have a plan to execute against. And that fundraising plan was set into motion somewhat years in advance. But when you get hit with a pandemic and then you get a follow on, kind of recessionary signals, it changes your plan. So you have to be resilient. We are raising money now, and what we've found is those who want to invest really want to see that you are an expert in what you're doing. You have a very clear plan of what you're going to do with that money, and it leads to the next round of investment, which is generally associated with a major milestone. So for the young entrepreneurs and for the seasoned ones, nothing about this is easy, but what makes it worthwhile and what makes you successful in it is that true grit that Petey has demonstrated from day one, that all of us, even the veterans, that went to war, all were inspired by, working at it every single day and having an understanding of what you're up against. Setting your terms and conditions appropriately are just part of that.
Mm-hmm. Miles, sticking with you for a moment, and we'll come back to Petey. On the raise side of things, how caught up do you feel, we should be on valuation? I'm curious about that because, it's the thing you're going to take a knock on, right? Unless you have something truly unique and remarkable, great team. You have all the fundamentals in place and you meet the right investor at the right time. There's a lot of nuance there, and timing is obviously important too. But, in general, valuations on, like, you may have got an 8x, a year ago, now maybe you're getting a 6x, and you don't have to raise unless you're going to run out of money. In many cases, you do actually have sometimes, depending on the type of business and where you are in your life stage, the opportunity to say no. Like, hey man, I'm not prepared to take that valuation and give away that much for X, From your experience, Miles, like, how caught up should we be on something like valuation at the moment?
I would say that depending on the stage of the business that you're in, but for us, I'll speak on my behalf. We're a seed stage company. When it comes to risk, you got to understand the investor's perspective. They're going to look at where you're at in risk. Then they're going to look at whether or not they think you can get out of that risky zone. We could utilize all kinds of fancy MBA terminology, but do you have a solid, unique product or service? And are you gaining traction? Are people agreeing with you in the direction you're going? That's really where your value is. Because if you haven't produced it yet and you don't have 24 months of multiple revenues, easily bankable type stuff, and you're really trying to be a moonshot, a new inventor and a new creator, you have to show that people are interested in what you're doing. And so when it comes to valuations, I would say that, we racked our brains for months around it. And then it was a much easier conversation. What I did was called up as many investors as I could. And I said, hey, I'm not looking for money right now. I'm looking for advice. If you were to put money into me right now, what percentage would you want for $1 million? And they tell me, they're like, well, for $1 million where you're at right now, I expect this amount. Thanks, hung up, call the next guy. Call the next guy. Call the next guy. Then they would always call back saying, well, were you looking for money? I'd be like, no, I wasn't. I'm not looking for money yet, but I'll be looking for money soon. But I'm trying to gauge whether, how much I should be asking at what percentage. And that led to some very successful conversations with investors because I did not come to them in a position of scarcity. I came to them from a position of curiosity. And I was, looking at what my options were. I wasn't putting out term sheets. I was letting them tell me what their term sheets expected would be. And in doing so, I said, well, I think you're underpricing me because of these reasons. Can you tell me why I shouldn't be a little bit higher? Sometimes they would look at me and go, you know what? I didn't take that into consideration. We can give you a little bit higher. Other times it was, we got a little too further along in that. And I said, well, I think I'm here. And they said, well, because of these reasons, you're not. It took me about 20 conversations, probably about 2 months of trying to rack my brain with my own partners and about 3 days of making phone calls. So get out there and talk to investors. They're there for your success. If they're there, I mean, you'll know if they're interested in your success or not from the very get-go.
Petey, bringing you back into the conversation for a moment, how do you scale this? Like, let's just say you will win. I really believe you guys, it's a case of when. But let's say when you're successful, I don't know, whenever that is, and you get $10 million for argument's sake. Like, how do you scale something like this where it is engineering focused? You know, it's not like I put $1 into my advertising and I get $3 out. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit of a different scaling challenge that I would imagine you guys have. So Petey, how do you see scaling like this, the kind of Rainmaker proposition, if you like?
Well, first off, I think my video just dropped. I apologize. Should I go totally clear?
No, you're good, man. Just have a chat. It's all good.
Yeah. So when we look at scaling, it really comes down to both sides of the equation. We need to find the partners that are producing enough materials so the waste side, waste and quotations. We also need to find those partners that are willing to take the biochar off. So that's why we focus on these two industries: the arbor and landscape side, sawmill waste, and then the chicken coop side. Right now, Tyson manages 150,000 chicken coops across North America. And so they're the leading poultry protein supplier. They need a lot of biochar to manage all those coops. On the other side, these arbor firms are paying extraordinary amounts of money to throw waste into landfills, and they could find a new way to find new revenue streams. And so it really comes down to matching these partnerships in a small footprint. So we want to kind of think of a hub and spoke model, where we can set up a Rainmaker, find the waste supply, and then find those carbon sink partnerships kind of in that small community for the best impact.
So speaking, go ahead, Miles.
And that's the way we can really scale this into every community across the globe.
So how, like, obviously strategic partnership sounds to me like a very important thing. Like, you want to take this Rainmaker and put it near these landfill sites, if you like, where there's a lot of wood waste, etc. How do you identify a good strategic partner for you guys so that you can actually scale and ultimately make the difference you guys want to make? Miles?
Yeah, so I mean, the clearest answer is, where can we create, new networks between entities, and where can we bridge industries together that are trying to participate in sustainability but have no real core mission to do so. It's a mission that's been added. So I look at places like Spotify, for instance, are buying massive amounts of carbon credits. You have Walmart that's participating in these things because they know they're a part of kind of a global supply chain. It's going to find those companies that have signaled out, said, hey, we want to be sustainability leaders, and also knowing enough about their own business operation that says we know where their waste streams are. And so those relationships are really about us building a connection between company A and company B, saying, you're a waste producer, you're a needer of carbon credits or biochar. Let's put you guys together so that we can have longer term relationships. That's really one of the best ways of going about this. And then working with, so we're under an Air Force Innovation Research and Development program called the Small Business and Innovation Research. And, they've got a great hypothesis. They say, we are going to be this America's innovation seed capital. And what it does is it gave us an opportunity to get to that May 4th demo. And now we're able to use that acceleration that they gave us to show. We've had a meeting with Queen Maxima from the Netherlands, and her consulate is interested in us trying to work out business. That was connected because of this program. So you look at large private initiatives, private public partnerships, and then working with universities to say, hey, look, we're an innovation technology company that wants to bring a more strategic partner and community approach to solving for sustainable power and waste and zero waste initiatives.
So gentlemen, question for both of you. What's the vision that you guys have for this thing? Like, what does the world look like, when you've hit your level of success, whatever the success means to you? Like, what is the ultimate difference that you guys are trying to make?
There should be a Rainmaker in every community with 50,000 people or more around the world. I mean, that pile of waste, and I'll bring it up again, just so that we can all see. This is 1 week's worth of waste alone. And this is a small town, an average town. There's towns like this all over the world. And there are piles like this that continue to grow. And there's no good place to take them. Not yet. We're providing that solution. But this is not unique in the sense that this is only in Lebanon, Tennessee. This is in Colorado. This is in my town here in Bernie. Drive 5 miles down the road and there's the big mulch pile where people are developing more housing and creating more, paved parking areas. And they're raising certain areas of the ground, and there's a lot of trees that come up. So wherever we're developing, wherever human beings are growing in population and prospering, there is a need for our technology. And we're ready to partner with private industry as well as local municipalities to help them with their zero waste initiatives and be truly measurable. We measure the entire waste at the molecular level from the moment that it arrives into our custody to the moment that it is sunk into a carbon sink. And that is our promise, is that we're not just another burn it and heat up some water at a boiler solution. We're a transform your waste into something that is of good public utility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can't wait for you guys to pull that off. It's like it's such a huge problem. I think 30 billion is probably a little bit lower on my side here. But I want to have a bit of fun with you guys, and then we'll wrap up. So I'm going to give you both the keys to the Map Round Show time machine. Don't crash. But I'd love for you to go back to day one. When you were like, hey, let's do this thing, and you didn't even have the Rainmaker, and you're like super embryonic. What advice, if you could go back to yourselves when you were on day one, like what advice would you give yourself about building Locoal?
Oh, I'll take that one. So you can build an idea only so far by yourself. And then when you have one teammate, it grows exponentially faster, and the smarter, more gifted team members you bring on, it just grows that much quicker in the right direction with the right solutions. So finding the proper teammates that you can trust, and Miles has a statement, he loves the speed of trust. And so we move that quickly because we believe in each other, we believe in our capabilities, and at the end of the day, we have the same passions and the same goals aligned.
Miles?
If I could go back to day one, I would tell myself maybe to invest into Tesla whenever they were really down, and then I wouldn't be raising money at this point, but the advice I give myself from 5 years ago when we first really started talking about this is, pace yourself, because there has been times through this journey where I did not, and we were working 20-hour days, and I was only seeing my family in the wee hours of darkness. And, you think at the time, well, I've got to get this done. But in all reality, you're going to get it done when you need to get it done. And you need to be able to pace yourself, because even if I did a 20-hour day, it doesn't make up for me being very productive for 2 days after that. And so it's not good for your health. It's not good for your mental health. And Petey and I have had our fair share of ups and downs with teammates that had to come and go. Finding that right team is not an easy task. But the positive message I would give myself is it is absolutely worth it. Every single up, every single down. There is no place I would rather be than wake up and be the CEO and founder of Locoal. And I ask my teammates all the time, I'm like, is there anywhere else you'd rather be? Yeah, we might be running out of money 1 month, or we may be, dealing with a major maintenance problem another month, and we're out there and we're late. But man, we share a lot of love with each other. I served with half the guys that are on my team, and no matter how hard it got, we could always laugh about something. And that's my last piece of advice is don't take yourself too seriously. Nobody else is. And those who weren't learned to have the right type of temperament and the right type of tempo, you build the friends and the coalitions you need to get through it. So keep on believing in yourself, all right, and find other people that believe in you, so that when you start to doubt yourself, there's 3 or 4 people that'll give me a call and be like, shut up, you're awesome, we're doing this, here we go. Happens to all of us.
Yeah, exactly. It really does. And funny you mentioned what you just said, because I've often said like building a startup's literally like going to war, except there's no bullets, but it feels kind of the same. Like you're building camaraderie, you're going into the unknown, you don't know, like if it's a life or death situation for the business anyway, we hope, unless you're jumping off buildings, but it's similar, right?
I took the team that I have, I took two of the people that are on my team, I literally did take to war with me. And I should say more along the lines, I was a lieutenant at the time. They took me to war. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting dynamic when you're administratively in charge of somebody by rank, but by experience and all other measures, they're the ones that know, they're closer to the information. And so, and closer to the experience of combat. And Josh and Tim, two of the critical guys that spent those 6 months, it was actually more like 10 months on a couch in the blazing heat of Texas. Every day we would look at each other and we'd say, hey, we've done this before. We have literally built an entire operation in the middle of a desert, in the middle of the blazing heat with no resources. We can do this. And because of that attitude and because of that grit and that team camaraderie that we carried from our decade ago in service, we overcame some things that I would say is a rare success.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you guys are doing is truly remarkable, like genuinely, dude. Like I think it's hardcore. And I think I can only imagine what's going to be, or positive things are going to come, not only for you guys as a team, but also for the world. Like once you guys reach scale, I think it's going to be a really amazing thing to watch. So guys, thank you, Petey. Thank you, Miles, for being on the show. It's been a real privilege having you all here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Cheers, everyone.